What is up, everyone? JD here for JD for EDC. Hope you're all doing well today. Got another big hand review for you. We're going to be talking about the Arcane Design Abyss. What I'll be doing today is going through specs for the knife. I'll do some size comparisons to help you with the reference of the size of this knife, carry profile, and I'll go and jump into thoughts and impressions once we get through that. So let's go ahead, jump into the actual knife specs. So this Abyss has a 3.5 inch M390 blade with 4.5 inch titanium handles. It is a frame lock knife. Overall length is 8 inches, right in that sweet spot for an EDC. Claimed weight is 4.35 ounces. Let's grab the scale and bring that out here and have a look at the weight. You're going to 0. There we go. Yep, coming in at 4.3 ounces. So as advertised, which is what you love to see from a manufacturer. Next, we're going to go ahead and run through some size comparisons. Hopefully this will help you with a frame of reference for the size of this particular knife. First, we'll bring out the AD 20.5 in the shark's foot. So you can see the AD 20.5 is going to be a little bit shorter, but pretty close in size, not too bad. And then we'll go ahead and bring out the Spyderco Shaman. And as you'll see here, the Shaman's a little bit bigger. So kind of in between the size of these two knives, not just from the length, but also kind of like the girth to the knife, a little bit more friendly for EDC. Coming out of the Demco AD 20.5, and then the Shaman coming in just a little bit more girthy overall. Let's go ahead and move these two out of the way, and then we'll go ahead and bring out the next two comparison knives. First, we're going to bring out the Demco. We're going to bring out the Bug Out. The Benchmade Bug Out here is a little bit smaller, a little bit more friendly EDC size, and then we'll go ahead and bring out the SIG K320 by Hogue. You can see the Hogue is a little bit more girthy, but it's actually very similar in carry length. So that's pretty neat, or overall length. I guess I shouldn't say carry length, but pretty close and a very interesting comparison in my mind. So let me go ahead and move these crossbar lock knives out of the way. And then we'll go ahead and bring out the budget knives that I have for the size reference. First, we'll bring out the Kubi KU321 sub 3-inch knife. You can see just how much smaller it is than the Abyss. And then we will bring out the Buck 110, very budget friendly American made knife, under 30 bucks still to this day. And you do get, it is plastic handles and you get 440C blade steel, but it's a good work knife, a good user that you can abuse and not worry about, and that's going to be really easy to sharpen. But as you can see here, the Abyss definitely is still a little bit smaller in length than the Buck 110. What I'll go ahead and do now is go ahead and give you that thickness profile comparison so you can see just how thin or thick the knife may be. And hopefully that'll give you an idea of how it's going to carry in the pocket. A little bit hard with the chamfered edges here, so I'm going to do my best to kind of line them up visually. But you can see because of the bolsters here, it does look like it's a little bit thicker. But if you look past that, you'll be able to see that the Abyss is actually just a little bit thinner inside of those bolsters. Let me go ahead and grab the Bug Out, and you'll be able to see. It is really hard to do it this way with those bolsters, but you can tell the Bug Out is definitely a thinner overall knife. This definitely has a more chunky presence to it. And then again, the AD 20.5, even thinner still. And just in case, I will bring out a Shaman here in case that helps anyone more familiar with the Shaman. You can see about the same thickness inside again of those bolsters. With those bolsters, it is thicker overall. Let me go ahead and jump into my thoughts and impressions of the Arcane Design Abyss. I did pick up this colorway because I thought the acid etch stone wash blade looked really good. I love the compound grind. Very much reminds me of the Chavez Redencion Street. I like that a lot. You have the full flat grind here out at the tip to help give some strength out there, and then you have a nice hollow grind. It goes almost just past, I would say, a quarter of the way up the blade, keeping that thinness, and then it starts to thicken out just a little bit at the midpoint. You do have the design fuller here, but it is not actually functional at all. You cannot, at least for large hands. So again, this review coming from someone with larger hands, if you have medium, small hands, medium hands, large hands, it's going to be a different experience, but it is not really very friendly. I have to come way down to get that fuller to work for me. If I try to go here, I'm engaging the lock bar, but if I'm coming in the lock bar relief cut, I am able to get it just fine. But again, I have to move way down, and it is not very consistent for me. Also, I will say that you do kind of engage the lock bar if you're laying the finger flat. Try to get a good angle here. It's a little hard, and I'm not promise I'm not trying to flip anyone the bird, but if you lay flat on the lock bar and you try to deploy, make sure I have a good grip, you see it doesn't really work. But if you come out a little bit further and you put your meat, and I'm going to hold it securely to do that, put your meat of the finger on top of this and let it dig in and catch it just a little bit, you can flip it out as long as you don't leave your finger on the knife of the blade once you've actually deployed it. But it does have a pretty solid, pretty strong detent on the knife, so it is a little bit of muscle is required to kind of get that out, and you can kind of see it is hard to fail it because of that. I know earlier I was pushing at the same time and kind of had my finger still on the knife as I was talking through the demonstration of the reverse flick, but it is a solid detent for sure. It feels really nice to deploy it with the flipper tab. I really do like the flipper tab. Has pretty good jimping, sharp enough even though it is very low profile. The finger just catches it and shoots the blade right out. The ceramic bearings in the pivot are nice and smooth. It is not a guillotine. It is very controlled, very glassy feeling, smooth shut action on the Abyss. The other thing that I'll mention here is it is a little awkward to thumb deploy because, again, for larger hands, and I imagine even medium hands, because it's more than 50% of the opposite side of the show side or the frame lock side has that bar occupying the space. So unless you're good at being able to kind of trap the knife to get back here, you're really just, and that is super sketch for me, you're really trying to get on top of the pocket clip, and again, you're on the lock bar with that pocket clip. Let me show you here if I can. It is like 50-50, but when you're putting enough pressure on this to try to hold it, you're getting that lock bar. Now, having said all of that, if you come way down to the relief cut, if you have the larger hands, you can deploy it just fine, but you have to put that finger right on the lock bar cut relief. And even then, my finger is sliding. You have to kind of use that, damn, I keep sliding, guys. You have to kind of use I swear I can do this. There you go. It's really awkward, as you can tell. You have to kind of have the forward finger up here, or the front index finger up here, and then you have to, and I keep sliding. I just can't. It's not very good for thumb deploy. It is really intended to be flipped or come down to the relief cut and grab the bottom of the fuller and flip it out. Or you can do, like I mentioned, just a little bit right here on that corner, and you can flip it out. And again, I'm even having to kind of feel for where I'm at, because if you don't, it really does, it hurts to dig at the meat there. So that covers all the deployment methods and everything to that degree. As far as the ergos, this has a more sharp angle approach. Even though it's not sharp, it is rounded down nicely, but you can kind of feel how the knife goes from chunky to this cutout here, this angled cutout going up to the top of the knife. So you can feel all that in hand, but none of it is sharp. You can just kind of feel the design lines of the knife when it's in hand. The other thing too, I was worried about how it would feel with this relief cut, this angle cut back here on the back spacer, coming down and leaving no space. But because, you know, the pinky and the ring finger are a little bit shorter, it actually works really well and is super comfortable in hand. The edge came from the factory. I believe I asked around, and I've heard that Arcane has used both Best Tech and Riat, which are, you know, really good Chinese manufacturers. Their knives are usually of very good quality, grinds very good quality, heat treats seem to be pretty good as well. So, you know, I've had no issues. This went, when I tested it on paper, it went through the paper just fine. The acid etch stone wash really does hide and mask the cardboard cutting that I did. And actually, hang on one second, because I do happen to have a sheet of paper so I can show you, even after going through some cardboard, I mean, it is still really nice. The edge on that, of course, when you get out to the tip, you're going to run into where it starts to roll and it gets hung up a little bit when you're trying to do that, but it works really nice and it feels really good. Jimping is in an okay spot. Again, larger hands, I would have liked for it to be out further. You're really kind of far back and in an awkward position. If you're trying to do detailed or controlled work with the tip, you're better off laying right on top of the swedge, which can be a little sharp, but it's not awful at all. Also, because it does have the 2 tips here for the utility cuts, I found that actually works really, really well. As you can see there, cuts through and slices through really nicely. So draw cuts are no issue whatsoever. Has a nice long tip, so if you need to pierce to get into, like, again, a midpoint of a cardboard cut or something, like a really big piece of cardboard, and you're just working your way from the middle out, so you have better control of that cardboard, that's going to work really well for you. The access to the lock bar, you're looking at, well, the lockup first, you're looking at about 40% lockup. You have a lock bar insert here, which does have a T6 access for you to remove it if you need to do any type of cleaning or maintenance. And the, access to the lock bar, it is slightly off-centered, or not off-center, but offset, so that you can get in there. And then they do have milling in here, so you can come in like this. You can come in from the side if you like to have it drop. If you like to pull up, it's going to work really well. So covering all of the different types of ways to disengage the lock bar really nicely. Back spacer is black to match the pocket clip and the hardware, which I think the blacked out hardware looks really good. You have very minimal branding. The Arcane Design logo there. And then trying to see, I thought, oh no, that's actually oil. I was going to say, I thought it had the blade steel in here, but it is M390. And I don't recall seeing anything else in regards to this. Oh yeah, so it does have the Arcane Design logo tucked to the inside of the backspacer, which I think is pretty cool. And because it is that darker material, you can see all of the relief cuts that are inside of the handles to make this really lightweight. I did choose this one here because I do like the anodized bolster behind the pivot there. I think that, or I wouldn't call it a pivot collar, I feel like it's too big, but it's also not really a bolster either. So I guess technically a pivot collar is the more appropriate description there. But I really liked that colorway more than I did the DLC coating on the one that I think is black and red. I'm not quite sure, but I think that's the coating on there. Now, just again to give you some, I wanted to think of some things that were a little bit more unique in there to kind of think about at this price point. You could again pick up a Chavez, Redencion, or a Street for around the same price, but again, those are both going to be potentially Riot made. This, I believe, it feels like a Riot based on how I've handled both Riot and Best Tech, and they have a certain feel to them, but this does have a very Riot feel. But I could be wrong, because Best Tech's quality is very, very good. Another knife that you could, for a little less money, if you liked the unique flair, but you liked something that had a little bit more of a utility mindset to it, would be the Roxy 3 from Wii. That's another knife that's a little bit smaller, but with that dedicated forward finger choil, you are getting a full forehand grip, but you're not getting quite as much cutting edge there. You are getting a surprising amount of cutting edge from the Roxy 3, even though it is a little bit smaller in length with that dedicated forward finger choil, but it's a very solid knife that I liked for that. So just a couple recommendations. If you're looking for something that is not made in China, I will again bring out the Demco AD 20.5. You can pick these up. They're a Taiwan made knife. Or if you like something USA made, I would probably have to go back to the SIG K320 made by Hogue. I know that's an S30V blade, and it's actually a little bit more weighty with the aluminum. That potentially could be something if you wanted a little bit of a different recommendation. But I feel like if you're watching this video and you're looking at this review, you're interested in the Abyss, right? Or maybe the Crawler, which was the other one that I did take into consideration. But I felt like this had the better handle setup for the ergos. The Abyss looked like it was really skinny directly behind the blade and then kind of fattened out back here. I haven't handled it to say that for certain. I'm really just, again, going off the specs on the website, and I'm really thinking that's the case. I really like this. I love how unique it is. I do wish it was a little bit more of a drop point. I do like the Tonto style, but I feel like a drop point, or maybe even just pulling the clip back just a little bit on there, would make me feel a little bit better, because I worry if I drop this particular knife, what would happen? I feel like that tip would absolutely break off, because it is super fine and acute way out on the tip. So really, really fine point. It definitely would get your splinters out. Overall, very cool knife. I very much like it. Build quality feels awesome. Fit and finish on it is really, really good, and the action is nice. A couple of complaints with the means of deployment from a larger hand perspective, a little bit harder to do that. But again, you know, the first and foremost means of deployment is that flipper tab, and that works really good for a light switch. Could be a little bit bitey, but you know, I have handled knives for so long that I've kind of built up a little bit of a tougher, thicker skin on my index finger. But even when I switch to the left hand, which I don't do that often, feels, you know, it feels good enough. It isn't harsh or anything like that. I can just tell it has a much heavier detent, but that reverse flick, that is, you're going to need some strength in there to get past that detent. You're going to need some strength in the finger. I feel like that, or just, you know, move down on the knife and, like I said, come behind that relief cut and catch the very bottom of the fuller, which is a little awkward to kind of talk and do through. But you know, you can do it that way. And, you know, in all honesty, it puts you just a little bit further back on the knife, but a little quick adjustment, and you're right in the hand position to cut. So let me know what you think about this particular knife down in the comments. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are about it. I just think it's very cool, very unique, but still has a nice functional attitude about it, even though it's, you know, a very standout design in my mind. If you enjoyed today's video, do me a favor, leave a like. Consider subscribing if you're not already subscribed. I appreciate everyone out there that is. Your support means the world to me. Don't forget to have that notification bell set to all so you don't miss any alerts when future videos drop. Don't forget, the links are also down in the description. I'll link where I picked up this knife. It was sold out when I checked, but turn your notifications on. Get with Arcane Design's website, and if you have Instagram, so that you get alerts whenever any type of future iterations drop. I have links for other recommended knives, tools, and websites that I like to visit to look at what's coming out soon. So hopefully that helps everyone out there. I hope all of you have a fantastic week, and until next time, peace.